onus on the states. Each state can have its own COVID protocols in a way. As I said, Karnataka, the first state to ask people to mask up indoors. To our top story tonight, the Narendra Modi government has issued an advisory to states in view of the COVID surge in countries like China. States have now been advised to focus on adherence to COVID norms like masking. The Prime Minister chaired a high-level meeting this afternoon on COVID. The message from the government is don't panic, but follow safety measures. What's really the government's policy on COVID? That's our top story tonight, the latest COVID scare.
Mask up. The message is coming right from the top. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his cabinet colleagues came to Parliament on Thursday wearing masks, even as there are fears of a fourth wave due to the surge in neighbouring China. Prime Minister Modi also chaired a high-level review meeting to take stock of the war on COVID. Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia made statements in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha detailing the union government's advisory to states.
राज्यों को भी स्थानीय स्तर पर सामुदायिक निगरानी बढ़ाने के लिए और कोविड को नियंत्रित करने के लिए सलाह दी जा रही है। राज्यों को जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग बढ़ाकर सभी पॉजिटिव केसों का जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग करने की सलाह दी गई है, जिससे अगर देश में कोई नया वेरिएंट आता है तो समय से उनकी पहचान कर सार्वजनिक स्वास्थ्य के लिए कदम उठाया जा सके।
The centre in its advisory said that in view of the coming festival season, the state should focus on adherence of COVID-appropriate behaviour like masking and use of sanitizers. The states are urged to increase coverage of precaution doses, which is right now very low. 2% random sampling of international travellers at airports is also advised. Several states, including Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh and Delhi, also held review meetings.
हमारे पास 8,000 बेड्स कोरोना के लिए अलग से रखे हुए हैं। अगर जरूरत पड़ेगी तो 8,000 बेड्स अभी फिलहाल खाली हमने रखे हुए हैं। इस बार हमारी तैयारी 36,000 बेड्स तक की है। अगर जरूरत पड़ेगी तो हम 36,000 बेड्स कोरोना के तैयार कर सकते हैं। आज हमारे पास 928 मीट्रिक टन ऑक्सीजन स्टोर करने की कैपेसिटी है।
We discussed about corona and we are monitoring all this. We set up a committee also to take care that what is going on.
The COVID alert comes ahead of a long festival season. Airports in India are already seeing nearly 1 million footfalls every day, a figure bound to increase as holidays and tourist season begin. Random tests of passengers at airports have also started. At railway stations, passengers are being advised to mask up. Markets across India are crowded. While medical experts have recommended following COVID norms like masking, they also say that there is no reason to panic. COVID cases in India right now are at the lowest levels since the pandemic began. Only 190 positive results were reported on Wednesday. Bureau Report, India Today.
So as the COVID scare once again returns, lots of questions are being asked, and we thought today we'd get someone who's been deeply associated with this fight against COVID for the last couple of years. The country's leading doctor, pulmonologist, former AIIMS director, now with Medanta, Dr. Rajdeep Sardesai. Appreciate your joining us, sir. Good to have you back in a way to once again clear all our FAQs. Let's look at those frequently asked questions. The first one that's coming in, Dr. Guleria, is the most obvious one. Looking at all that's happened in China, other parts of the world, is a fourth wave possible in India, or is that an exaggeration to suggest we could have another wave?
So there are two parts of this. One is, are we going to see more cases, or are we going to see a wave with more hospitalization and deaths? I think what we may see is increase in number of cases with mild illness, but I don't think that we're going to see an increase in hospitalization or deaths, because we have our immunity is high, and we've already seen that this variant causes more of upper respiratory tract involvement and doesn't lead to pneumonia like we saw with the Delta wave. So we may have increase in number of cases, but no increase in hospitalization or deaths.
That's reassuring in a way. What you're saying is more infections possibly, but not hospitalizations, particularly like we saw in the first two waves. Therefore, the next question that's coming to you, Doctor, our frequently asked question is BF.7 or BF.7. The variant has been here since July. There are at least 4 cases that have been detected. Is this the one that can trigger a wave? Or is it much like Omicron, a sub-variant which will increase infections but will not result in major hospitalizations?
So I think that what we've seen is, and as you rightly said, that this variant has been in India for quite some time, but we've not seen an increase in hospitalization or deaths. We may have had an increase in number of cases, but there is a lot that we don't know because a large number of people are not coming forward and getting tested. So we may say that the number of positive cases in our country is low, but it's possible that there are people who have a flu-like illness, a mild illness. They think it could be COVID, they think it could be just common flu, and they just take symptomatic treatment and go and don't get tested. Or many people do an RT-PCR, do a rapid antigen test, and it turns out to be positive, but they don't report it or don't do a RT-PCR test, and therefore we don't know the exact number of people who are there with mild illness. So it's possible that we may have had number of people who've had a flu-like illness, a mild illness, they recovered on their own, they didn't have to go to hospital, and they were not picked up. So we may have had cases, but like I said, we're not seeing more hospitalization, we're not seeing more deaths, despite the fact that this new variant has been around for some time. But having said that, there's always a concern that when you have a new variant which is circulating, and there are increasing number of cases as we're seeing in China, could that lead to mutations going one step more and new variants emerging? We know that when these variants infect people whose immunity is low, they can stay in the body for a long time and they will then evolve, and we may develop new variants which may be variants of concern.
Right, but that's for the future. For now, what you're saying is, in a way, no need to panic. Therefore, I come to the third question, because today Karnataka is the first state, Dr. Guleria, which has said that they will ask for mandatory masking in all indoor venues. Should wearing mask be mandatory? I'm taking a flight tomorrow. Should I be wearing a mask on the flight?
So I think it's a good option to wear a mask, and I personally feel that masks not only protect you against COVID, but other respiratory viral infections which we see during the winter months. They also give you good protection against air pollution if you're coming from a place like Delhi. So wearing a mask, therefore, is not something that is bad. It's something that one should encourage. But should we make it mandatory? I'm not sure, because even when we do make it mandatory, many people still don't follow it. So I think it's important to increase public awareness, to make people realize the importance of wearing a mask in general, and that should help. And I think that would be the way forward.
Okay, so in a way what you're saying is it's a good idea to wear a mask, and therefore whether it's mandatory or not, wear a mask as far as possible is what you're saying. Is a 4th dose of the vaccine needed? I took a dose, Dr. Guleria, my booster in the first half of this year. Should I be taking a 4th dose? Is that really needed?
So this is something that we need to have more data on. We don't have enough data to say what is the current situation in terms of our immunity. It would be logical to think that after a year it may be worthwhile to take another booster. But the issue is the booster as effective as it was in the past against the new variants? Or do we need to change our vaccine strategy in terms of now a new vaccine which covers for the circulating strain? So I think we need more data, but at some point in time, I think one would need to take another booster, whether it's early next year or later on. We need to collect data on that, and also data on what booster would be more useful considering the current circulating variants as far as COVID is concerned.
So should we wait for an upgraded vaccine? Is that what you're suggesting, that there's no urgency to go in for a booster?
Yes, so if you've already taken a booster, there's no urgency to take another booster. But I think we should also do good quality research to see what is the current status of the efficacy of the current vaccines, and do we need to develop a new vaccine which covers the circulating strain and is more effective and would be more useful as we do for influenza every year.
So is a vaccine plus natural immunity strong enough, doctor? The fact that I've taken 2 doses, I took my booster, natural immunity now strong enough?
So what it seems likely in India is that a large number of people have had the vaccine, and along with that they have got natural immunity because a large number of people have had exposure to Omicron or other variants of COVID, and therefore the combination of natural infection along with the vaccine possibly gives you a good long-lasting immunity, and that's why I think we are in a little better position than, let's say, countries like China.
Okay, that's reassuring. Since you're speaking on China, your sense, doctor, is what we are seeing at the moment China specific? What we've seen happening in the last couple of weeks, this surge in China, is it very China specific? Therefore, we in India are relatively protected, insulated.
So I think that this is China specific, and for 3 broad reasons. One is China focused on a zero COVID policy. What that meant was that they did not allow the virus to spread. Even if they had a few cases that had mild COVID, they would clamp down and have a very aggressive lockdown. So that was good in the early days, but what it really led to subsequently was that you had a large part of your population which was never exposed to the virus and in a way was naive to the virus, and you had no antibodies against the virus, even if the virus had the chance of causing mild infection. Secondly, we are not, a large number of the population there has not got the vaccine. The data suggests that even the older age group, the vaccine uptake has been low, and even in people with comorbidities. So that is another factor which is a problem as far as China is concerned. And thirdly, since it's a locally made vaccine which has not been evaluated at an international platform, we are not sure what is the efficacy of the vaccine. So if we combine all of these 3 factors, along with the fact that you have a new variant, BF.7, which is more infectious and spreads rapidly, then this is what is happening in China. You have a population which has not been exposed to the virus. You have a variant which is spreading very rapidly, and this is leading to a large number of cases. And as the cases spread to people who are whose immunity is compromised or who are elderly, then that can lead to more hospitalizations.
Let's come back again for a moment to vaccines because the next question is, should mixing of vaccines be allowed? I took 2 doses of Covishield. Next time, should I be looking to take another vaccine? This is a question that's been asked often, even in the past.
So if we look at the data suggests that heterologous vaccination, that is when you combine or mix and match your vaccines, the immune response is better and you get a better protection as far as COVID is concerned. In the past, it was not being encouraged by many countries because you needed that many doses of the other vaccine to be available to be able to provide that to your population. So that is why most countries followed the same schedule because that was what was available. But now there is enough vaccines available, and therefore I think it's worthwhile to consider a mix and match as far as vaccines are concerned. Those who have taken Covaxin or Covishield could take the CobraVax vaccine, or you could also mix and match as far as Covishield or Covaxin is concerned. The data does suggest that it gives better immunity. Even the study from ICMR, which looked at some people who by mistake got the other shot as far as the second dose was concerned, their immune response was much better.
Are nasal vaccines the best option now? I had an epidemiologist a couple of days ago who said, nasal vaccines may be the way forward.
Yes, so nasal vaccines have multiple advantages. One is, of course, they're easy to administer to a large population, and therefore that is something which is very useful. But I think the other important advantage is that they also give mucosal immunity. So when you inject the nasal vaccine into the nose, it also causes an immune reaction and brings the antibodies at the mucosal level in the lining of the nose, and that protects you from the earliest part of the infection. It also decreases the chance of the virus replicating there and causing spreading more rapidly to others. So in the long run, a nasal vaccine which is good, which is shown to be efficacious and safe, may be something which may be better and more useful, but you have to be able to show that data that this is an efficacious and safe vaccine. It would therefore be something that would be the future.
Will taking another vaccine dose prevent long COVID is a question we've been asked. Long COVID is troubling a lot of people, doctor, and then comes this news of this latest COVID scare. How should one deal with it?
So there is a lot of concern about long COVID, and we're still learning some more and more about it. We've been seeing patients who continue to have some symptoms of long COVID even months or a year after they've had COVID. There's also data which suggests that those who've taken the vaccine, especially those who've taken the booster shot, they tend to have less long COVID, and this does give some protection against long COVID. Therefore, I would really urge people who have not taken the booster shot not only to protect themselves from the new variants, but also to have some protection from developing long COVID, to actually take the booster shot, because some data does suggest that it may help or decrease the chance of long COVID.
Okay. Let's come back, doctor, to China and travel, because you've got different parts of the world where we've seen a surge: Japan, South Korea, United States, China, of course. Should foreign travel be allowed? We are heading into Christmas and New Year. Should Indians be encouraged to travel abroad, or should we be cautious?
So I think we can't, it wouldn't be practical, and it wouldn't make sense to ban travel completely. One has to be careful, and maybe the high risk group, and especially the elderly, need to be extra careful if they're traveling in terms of COVID appropriate behavior. But we already have data which suggests that the new variants have already present in our country. So therefore, it's not that this is going to be something new which is going to come into our country. The BF.7 has been reported by INSAGOG over the last few months. And we may have even more cases if we did testing and did genome sequencing aggressively, and more people came forward and got themselves tested. Therefore, I think it's not going to make much of a difference even if we sort of ban air travel, because the virus has already entered our country. I would say that we should encourage people to follow COVID appropriate behavior. If they have not taken the booster shot, to take the booster shot. But traveling, having a blanket ban on travel may not actually really serve any purpose.
So which effectively almost answers my next question, which was, is domestic travel also risky? I think the point I'm making, doctor, is that this is a season where there'll be lots of crowds, weddings, holiday season. I'm traveling tomorrow, let me tell you, on my Christmas holidays. Should I be even at all thinking about cancelling it or regulating the kind of parties that I go to?
So what I would really say is that if you have an indoor party, if there is a big crowd, please wear your mask and try and have some degree of social distancing if possible. If it's an outdoor party and it's really a bigger area like a lawn or a garden, then still one is safe because the chance of transmission becomes less. But when you're traveling, it may be a good idea to keep wearing your mask and also to regularly wash your hands. So COVID appropriate behavior is something that we need to do. And I don't think there is a need to really panic. It's not something that we should all cancel our holidays. I think it's been a long time after which one is celebrating New Year by having celebration in the real sense. So I think we are not in a situation to really say that we should stop all of this. Our cases are very low and we're not seeing any admissions as far as hospitals are concerned.
I just also wanted to know, doctor, if lots of people are getting respiratory ailments, this is that time of the year, should the moment I get a respiratory ailment or get any kind of flu, go and get myself tested for COVID?
Yes, so there are two parts of this. One is a large number of people are getting flu-like symptoms. It may or may not be COVID, because this is the time when you get a lot of respiratory infections, and many a times it's influenza or a flu itself. And the treatment by and large remains the same. People just take paracetamol, hydrate themselves, take multivitamins, vitamin C, and they become all right. But I would really say that if you have COVID, don't only rely on the rapid antigen test, go and get the RT-PCR test done, because that will provide a database to how many people are actually having COVID and what is the variant that is circulating. Currently, we don't know that because a large number of people are not coming forward and getting the RT-PCR test done. Either they're just taking symptomatic treatment or they're just getting the rapid antigen test done, and if it's positive, they just isolate themselves, take symptomatic treatment but don't report it, and therefore we don't really know how many cases are we seeing of COVID during the winter months, how many cases are we seeing of influenza, and what is the variant which is currently circulating in our country, because the number of testing has really come down.
But are you saying, sir, that can an RT-PCR in India detect this BF7 variant clearly? It will detect it without a problem?
The RT-PCR will tell you whether this is COVID or not, but all RT-PCR samples now which are COVID positive go for genome sequencing, and by genome sequencing you will know what is the variant and you will come to know definitely if it is BF.7.
You know, are heart attacks a long COVID effect? We've seen in recent times, doctor, people in the age group of 40s, early 50s, very fit otherwise, suffering from heart attacks. They had COVID possibly in the first and second wave. This law, you know, you said that there's not enough data on long COVID, but is that one fear that maybe those who've got long COVID are susceptible to heart trouble?
Yes, that is a cause of concern, and like I said, we need more data. But yes, there are reports of people who have had COVID and a few weeks later have suddenly had a heart attack or dropped, had suddenly collapsed and died of an acute heart attack. It's possible that this could be related to the endothelial or the inflammation in the vessels that COVID causes. Also could be related to the heart muscle involvement that can happen because of the virus. But we need to have more data to really show a cause and effect relationship. Is this definitely a cause or is it just more incidental? And also, what is the mechanism behind it? And also, can we predict who is at a higher risk for developing this? I would really say that we should also sort of recommend that all people who recover from COVID should be slow in terms of going back to a lot of physical activities, going back to the gym. They need to do it slowly, because it seems to be one of the risk factors that you've recovered from COVID and you suddenly start exercising very aggressively, you have a higher chance of developing heart-related issues.
You know, how is BF7 different from Omicron that hit India, and linked to that are lockdowns a possibility? At the start of this year, doctor, you'll recall there was Omicron, but while it was infectious, there were very few hospitalizations. Do you believe BF7 as a subvariant is following that same path, and to that extent, we are relatively reassured and protected?
Yes, so the BF7 is basically a sublineage of Omicron. It has come from Omicron, and it's been 1 year since we've had Omicron, and what we've seen over the last 1 year is only sublineages which have emerged from Omicron. We have not seen any new other variant coming up like we had in the past, the Alpha, the Beta, the Delta. What we're seeing now is that Omicron has taken over all of these, and we don't see any of these variants, and the sublineages are there. What the data suggests is that these new variants are developing two important mechanisms. One mechanism is what we call that they are becoming more infectious. So Omicron had a R0 of 5. That was, if you had Omicron infection, you could infect 5 people on an average. The new strain, the BF7, has an R0 of 10 to 18, which means that if you have infection with a new strain, it is more infectious and it can spread and can infect almost 10 to 18 people. Also, it has a shorter incubation period. You get the infection and symptoms much more earlier. And also, it is developing immune escape mechanism, so that even if you have had COVID in the past or you've had the vaccine, you can still get the infection. But what we're seeing is that these two things are happening, but it's not causing more severe infection, it's not causing more deaths. And this seems to be what happened with the Omicron itself, which has been about a year old. So I think it's behaving like Omicron, but becoming more infectious and spreading more rapidly. And of course, the virus is evolving so that it can still continue to infect people by developing an immune escape mechanism.
So the final word from you, doctor. I had a doctor from America of Chinese origin who said that we are at half time. This is this is since it's been football fever, that the virus is at halftime at the moment. We don't know what will happen after the half. Is that a good analogy? Or should we be relatively secure that the worst is over?
So in my mind, the worst is over because unlike what we saw over the last 2 years, we now have a good degree of immunity that mankind has developed either through natural infection or through vaccination. So we have over the last 2 to 3 years evolved in terms of being able to develop immunity against a new virus which hit mankind in 2019 December. At that point in time, we had no immunity against this virus and we were totally sort of, I would say, vulnerable to this viral infection, and we saw this happening in the waves that we've seen over the last 2 years. But now, because of natural infection, because of vaccination, mankind has good amount of immunity to fight this virus, and therefore we are in a better situation. The only outrider here is how the virus will evolve. If the virus mutates to become another new virus, against which we have no immunity, then we may have a problem, but that seems unlikely, and we haven't seen a big change in the last 1 year as far as Omicron is concerned, and therefore I personally feel that we are in a better situation and we've crossed the halfway mark.
Okay, that's a good point on which, Doctor, perhaps to end. It's great to have you back and answering all those questions. You've reassured, I'm sure, many of our viewers by taking all these frequently asked questions. Dr. Guleria, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's turn then from there to the epicenter of this latest virus of COVID, China. The World Health Organization now expressing concerns about the COVID surge in China. A WHO official saying China might be struggling to keep track of the infections. The country has already stopped counting asymptomatic cases and deaths caused by underlying diseases. China, remember, recently changed its zero COVID policy to let the virus have a free run. The new strategy is to reach the peak soon and then get herd immunity. But the cost of this new policy, some say, could be 1.6 million deaths. Now, all of this, of course, has put the focus on China. What really does this mean for China? Andrew K.P. Leung is China strategist and analyst based in Hong Kong. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Leung. How do you see China's situation now that it's seemingly abandoned zero COVID, but faces the prospect, the specter of an increased number of COVID deaths?
There is a great deal of misunderstanding of what China's dynamic zero policy is all about. It's not about achieving zero cases in all circumstances. It's just to ensure earliest possible detection, earliest possible isolation, earliest possible cure, and earliest possible prevention. Well, so far, at least until January this year, China had been extremely successful. According to independent research institution like the Endemic Trust Barometer based in New York, they carry out a survey in January this year, looking at governments around the world and to see whether people supported their government in management of the pandemics. China came on top of everybody because of the very few deaths, and also basically stopping the spread of the virus from province to province. However, it's been 3 years, and the pandemic is petering out and morphing into something different, something like a severe case of flu, because it's much more infectious, spreading around, but the death rate, according to various scientific data, is nowhere compared to what it was.
No, but Mr. Leung, is China? Are we getting the full picture from China? Do we know whether China is reporting accurately deaths? Is there undercounting? There's a sense that there is no herd immunity, and the vaccines that China haven't worked.
Well, China have been using its own vaccine all the time. As I said, it have been very successful, at least until January this year. I don't want to repeat that, but China have been always using its own vaccine. And then the infection rate, the vaccination rate have been generally high, except for the elderly. But even now, the elderly, China is now doubling down on boosting the infection rate. Now, what's happening is that because of the sudden change, a lot of the people in China are in a panic mode because they're not used to this. And then because they are required to self-test, and then if they self-test, they probably get it, but then it doesn't mean that it's going to be any serious problem. It's just like a flu. So, but they have been used to this compulsory PCR test. And all of a sudden, they require to test themselves and require to treat themselves because the symptoms are very mild. So that's the problem.
So
other countries around the world, many other countries are no longer reporting their cases. You see.
So how do you explain how do you explain the images coming out of China on social media that suggest large number of deaths, high hospitalizations, element of panic? What explains these images coming out of China? Is it that they've just been taken by surprise?
Well, of course, that the increasing the death rate amongst the elderly, as I said, the elderly have very relatively low vaccination rate, and that's a worrying situation in China. That's why Beijing is now boosting the campaign to get the elderly vaccinated. But then the death rates are no longer are not really as alarming as make up to be. I mean, these numbers, 1 million, 1.6 million, is out of the blue. I mean, it's not by any means scientific, because so far China has suffered. There's not anywhere near a million, or fraction of a million, more like. Whereas the United States, with a quarter of China's population, has already suffered more than 1 million deaths, with a far superior medical and health system. So you've got to look at it in that light, and you've got to look at it in the light that the pandemic is changing into an endemic, and also look in the light that the a lot of people are not used to this all of a sudden relaxation, and there is a great deal of panic around. But I think the situation is going to continue like this for the next couple of months before the pandemic is generally petering out and people's confidence is returning.
So therefore, in conclusion, are you saying that the next 2 months are critical, that the situation we are seeing, that China will remain in a way a country where COVID continues to rage for the next couple of months? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, what I'm just trying to say is that the death rate in any case is not as alarming as it make up to be. But the next few months are going to be a period where a lot of people in China, they are in as I was just saying, in a sort of panic mode because they're not used to this, and then because that's why people are stockpiling medicine, because some of the Chinese medicine is in fact very, very effective. I mean, some of my friends in Hong Kong got infected, and after a couple of days and taking some Chinese medicine, then it's just like a severe case of flu. But of course, it doesn't mean that it's always like this. But the elderly, of course, is vulnerable. And that's why the next few months, when China's doubling down on getting the infection rate up for the elderly, and that's why the next few months could be quite testing.
Could the country go back into lockdown?
No, I don't think that it would go back to the lockdown because it doesn't make sense anymore. Because, as I said, the pandemic is already changing into something very different. It's just like the rest of the world. I mean, we are not seeing a completely new strain in China. Well, the scientific data suggests it's also part of the same phenomenon happening everywhere in the world. If you go to the United Kingdom, if you go to the United States, they're no longer reporting cases. Doesn't mean that there are no cases. Obviously, people get infected, and obviously, people they will be treating themselves and taking medicine. A lot of people get well, but still a lot of people get sick. But simply just like a flu, even flu can cause death. You know, so it's a question of percentage. It's a question of whether the disease is becoming a kind of endemic, and people have got to live with it just like a flu. And of course, that after 3 years, the Chinese people's sense of self-protection is very high, and also social distancing and so on and so forth are likely to continue.
Okay, let me leave it there. Mr. Leung, I appreciate your joining us because you've given us a sense, you've in a sense calmed a lot of people who fear that the situation could explode in China. But I thank you therefore for giving us your perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, from COVID, let's turn to tonight's Get Real India package. And today the story comes from Punjab, where a year ago, farmers of the state were protesting in Delhi against farm laws that were eventually scrapped. Now farmers in Firozpur in Punjab are protesting at home against a distillery. It's a protest that's gone viral, and the farmers claim the waste from the plant is polluting groundwater. It's put the Aam Aadmi Party government there on the defensive. Here's our Get Real India story.
These farmers of Mansoorwala village in Punjab's Firozpur have been on the road for 5 months now. They are on protest, demanding the closure of a nearby distillery. The farmers claim the discharge from the industrial unit is polluting the groundwater and air and killing their cattle.
ਇਹ ਜੋ ਫੈਕਟਰੀ ਜ਼ਹਿਰੀਲਾ ਧੂਆਂ ਕੱਢਦੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਸ਼ੂਆਂ ਦਾ ਚਾਰਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਸਰਦੀਆਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਓਸ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਪੱਤਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਜੰਮ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ 60 ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਪਸ਼ੂ ਇੱਕ ਪਿੰਡ ਚੋਂ ਨੁਕਸਾਨੇ ਗਏ ਆ
Weeks back, the locals led a protest after they allegedly found contaminated water in a tube well nearby a religious place.
जब से ये आई है तब से यहाँ का पानी और यहाँ के जीवन के ऊपर जो असर है वो उसका पै रहा है, सोशल इम्पैक्ट है। हर तीसरे घर में कैंसर है, ठीक। और पानी जो यहाँ से जो नीचे से सैंपलिंग हुई है, पानी पीने के लायक नहीं है, अनेबल है, वो ड्रिंकिंग वाटर नहीं है, वो पोल्यूटेड वाटर है।
We are in Mansoorwal village and behind me is the distillery which has become a protest hotspot from last 5 months. The local people from nearby villages are protesting here against this distillery and have been demanding closure of this industrial unit which according to them have not only polluted their water sources but also resulted in waterborne diseases.
Earlier this week, protesters clashed with the police in Zira. The Kisan Union has alleged the Aam Aadmi Party government in the state is trying to crush their peaceful agitation.
मतलब एक तरह जंग वाला माहौल बनाया बस जिवें जंग हो रही है हिंदुस्तान पाकिस्तान दी वो हालात बनाया बस ऐस एरिया नूं घेरन लोग बाणा विच दी आए हैं लोग रस्तियां नूं छड्ड के वट्टां तों दी आके इत्थे धरने नूं कायम रखिया लोकां ने.
The High Court has stepped in, directing the local administration to settle the dispute. While the government has proposed to form different committees to study the impact of the alleged pollution caused by the factory, the protesters refused to lift the dharna till the factory is closed permanently. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's take a break at this point. On the other side, we'll have a complete change in mood. Our good news today's story. The Indian team heroes who won the T20 championship for the visually impaired. We'll be speaking to them and asking them what it takes to be the world champions in the sport.
भैया जी हमला भैया जी 10 गोलियां ले ले
गोलियां नहीं रज्जा गोली
पर बाहर तो 10 लोग हैं
10 हो या पूरी बस अब तो बस 1 है तो डन है इसको कोई वॉच कराओ जब वॉचो में मिले ढेर सारे ओटीटी ऐप्स एक ही प्लान में तो हर कोई बोलेगा वॉचो वन है तो डन है।
वॉचो प्लान स्टार्टिंग एट जस्ट 42 रुपीज पर मंथ। आज ही सब्सक्राइब करें और पाएं सिलेक्ट प्लान्स पर 1 महीना कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री।
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Welcome back. Let's turn to our good news story. Remember, a couple of days ago, I told you about how the Indian team for the visually impaired won the T20 Cricket World Cup for a third time this week at the Chinnaswamy Stadium, defeating Bangladesh. And the video of the cricketers dancing in joy has already won many hearts on social media. It's been remarkable to see the growth in the sport and to see these visually impaired cricketers do so well and do the country proud. So I thought I'd bring someone who's been the driving force behind this. Dr. G. Mahantesh is the president of the Cricket Association for the Blind in India. Mahantesh, congratulations to you and the team. It appears that India is really the World Cup champion. No one seems to defeat us when it comes to World Cups for the visually impaired. We are the best in the world.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm extremely proud of my team, who have been consistently winning World Cup after World Cup, 3 in a row T20 hat-trick. And as our Honorable Sports Minister said, if we have made it 3, Chauka is not very far. And we have also won 2 ODI championships. All this happened in the last 10 years.
That's fantastic, because I'm told you're meeting the President, Draupadi Murmu, tomorrow. So you've,
yes,
obviously this is a moment that, T20 cricket for the visually impaired is right there on the map. Tell us what it's taken to, what is the, how challenging has it been to spread the sport across the country?
You know it better. You have been one of our long-standing supporter. Journey has not been easy, but every triumph has motivated us to move forward. And every struggle has kept our hopes alive. And our team has always made us proud. The struggle has always been for financial resources, infrastructure, meeting right kind of people. I have reached out to you many times to get right connections. So those connections have helped, sir. But particular funding, recognition from BCCI and Ministry of Sports, that will help these players a lot. And Samarthanam and Cricket Association for the Blind in India continue to struggle for resources.
Right.
So hopefully this would help us. Meeting Honorable President tomorrow, Madam Draupadi Murmu, would be a tremendous boost to morale of our players and organizers.
Well, I want to wish you and the team all the very best for what you've achieved, and you go from strength to strength. I know how difficult it has been to put all this together, but to organize a World Cup, then to win the World Cup. Just a final word to our viewers. Any message that you have for those who would like to know what, anything you'd like to say to them?
Yeah, so please do join, support Cricket for the Blind in whatever way you all can. Our cricketers need a lot of support. Organization need lot of support. But this time, as you rightly said, sir, crowd has been fantastic in the finals. So please do come whenever we have matches like this. Come and support in large numbers in whatever way you all can. And our players have a big request to meet Honorable Prime Minister, sir. Hope that will also come through.
Okay, great. It'll be great that you get a chance to meet the Prime Minister, the President, and you've done the country proud. Mahantesh, President of the Cricket Association for Blind in India, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, to our other good news today's story, a Kolkata-based NGO, Ek Tara, has been working among slum kids for years. Education beyond textbooks is the key focus of this NGO, which gives training in music and arts. Now, a Belgium-based organization has partnered with Ek Tara to expand their network, and they've created a rather unique space. Take a look.
Is education only limited to textbooks? What about art forms? While there are many programs to provide school education to underprivileged children, their talents in other fields rarely gets recognized. Kolkata-based NGO Ek Tara has been working for years to give kids from slums a chance to hone their talent in fields they like. The Ek Tara Learning Center gives training in multiple art forms, including music, drama and painting. The organization charges 400 rupees per year. Now, a non-profit organization based in Belgium has recognized the efforts of Ek Tara.
We are Tomorrowland, and we are working together with Ek Tara because we think that children must be able to be creative, to learn how to make music, to learn how to make drawings, paintings, design, because there's more in life than only, of course, you need to learn a language or you have to do mathematics. It's very important too, but we think also to express yourself in music or in dance is very important, and so that's why we decided to work together with Ek Tara.
Tomorrowland Foundation is partnering with Ek Tara to start institutes in India.
Tomorrowland Foundation is a part of Tomorrowland, which is the largest music and electronic music and dance festival in the world, and they wanted to open 3 schools for marginalized children, and we are one of the 3. So one is in Nepal, one is in Uganda, and one is in India, which is going to be in Ek Tara. This school is only for marginalized children, be it in this slum or any other community in the city, but we will reach out to only marginalized children, not for mainstream kids.
With this initiative, Kolkata's underprivileged children will get more exposure to arts and a chance to showcase their talent to peers across the world. With Rajesh Saha, Bureau Report, India Today.
Our image of the day. We have seen many doctors meeting their former patients, but this heartwarming reunion will melt your heart. The patient revisited her doctor after 11 years to clear the debt he took for his surgery. Back in 2011, the surgery was done for free as he couldn't bear the expenses. But this time, the doctor didn't take the money, rather had tears of joy. That's the benefit of being a doctor. You stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri, Jai Hind, Namaskar.
वो बहुत बड़ी चीज है।
Multiple times, both the IMF and the World Bank have said in several occasions, India is the brightest spot in the global economy and is an island of hope for global growth. So I just want to highlight the fact that real GDP growth and doubling of it is certainly a good indicator for which any government should work. But the way in which we have handled during COVID has kept us away from recession, whereas those who followed certain common principles, which was heard as advice given here also, have gone into recession.
प्रेजेंटेड बाय धूल आए पर घर पे ना टिक पाए।
विकास जी, आमतौर पर जब हम किसी को स्टूडियो में बुलाते हैं तो सबसे पहले यही कहते हैं कि स्वागत है आपका, लेकिन ऐसे समय में हम मिल रहे हैं कि मैं आपको शायद ये भी नहीं कह सकता, आपका शायद स्वागत भी नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि समय ऐसा है जब हम एक बहुत बड़े दुख के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं। पिछले 7 महीने में ऐसा लगता है कि आपकी पहचान विकास वालकर से बदलकर श्रद्धा के पिता की हो गई है। ये 7 महीने आपके कैसे बीते?
मैं तो मतलब सोचा भी नहीं था ऐसा मेरे बारे में ऐसा होगा, लेकिन मुझे बहुत दुख हो रहा है जो शायद मैं खुद ही झेल रहा हूँ। ये मेरे